All right, coming along here, I've mounted the motor to get as close as possible to the center line of the chain going all the way down to the sprocket. I have a C-clamp in place here, so it kind of keeps the chain on track and identifies where I need to be. I think the best tie points are to use the bottom mounting bracket of the original motor. This is a 2007 KX450. But I think what I want to do is create a bracket that ties into this back piece right here. I don't know if you can see that, but ties in on the other side. Ties in on the other side. If you follow this bracket back, it's in line with that other mounting point. So if I carry that all the way back, I could possibly fabricate something on the back end of this frame, whether I want to weld to the aluminum or make something that just rests up against it or does like a U bracket around this. It's kind of hard to see, but it goes all the way around. So there's a couple tie points. You could also use this. This rod does not move. However, when doing a kit like this, these bearings might rotate themselves out. So I need to put a spacer here anyways. I ordered some eyelets that are 17 millimeter. They're pillow block bearings with a 17 millimeter ID to go through here. So if I put two of those there and then some spacers on each side, it'll hold the bearings in place and create an additional mounting point for this guy here. So really, looking on the side view, the bracket can go right here, go around, tie into that point, tie into the top point as well. Very hard to see, but that guy right there. So if it does a U, or more like a C, goes right there, goes around, ties into three different spots, that it should be strong enough in order to hold it. So that's what I got so far. Let's check the center line here. I mean, that looks pretty straight to me. All the way down to the motor up there. And then right here, something that I have to do is with this bracket. So if I want to retain the rear foot brake, the little spring actuation, like right there, kind of runs into the side of the motor, this little PEM. Usually there's a spring that attaches to a eyelet right there, and then it allows the brake to go up and down. Well, up, return to the up position when you push it down, so it pops back up. I don't know if there's a spring that you can put right here in order to create that same actuation without preventing the brake from dragging. I don't know, something to look at. Yeah, I think that's the best mounting point. The battery originally fit like right here all the way across and went up. I could fit it upside down. I'll show you the battery. That's the battery there. 72 volt, 40 amp hour with a 150 amp continuous BMS. But at the phase wires, I pulled out the air filter. So I pulled out the whole thing, and funny enough that the FarDriver ND72530 controller actually fits into two of the holes. So I was able to cross mount the holes in order to get it really in there so it's not moving. So I took out the rubber casing where the air filter used to go attached to create more space. Could have left it on. I'm not too concerned about water getting in there because there is drainage, and I have the heat sink, the bottom of the FarDriver controller, like right there, so it's going to get a lot of airflow. And I think as long as I seal up the other portions, like right there, it'll prevent, too much water getting in. And I expect some water getting in, but I'm hoping that it's going to hit the back there. I might create some rubber grommet all the way across that's flat, so it's more watertight. But on the side fairings, there's always going to be holes. This one actually cracked here, just FYI, but there are holes in the side fairing for air to come through. So it wasn't meant to be a watertight spot. Anyways, so that is the mount, and that's where I'm at. Here's the mounting bracket that I have thus far. It took some fabrication, but really I wanted to point out there is some measurements that you really need to be aware of when you're creating a bracket like this. And in order to get this motor in the exact same spot as the other motor, because this whole bike is engineered to specific measurements in order for the swing arm to work without putting pressure on I forget what it's called, but the chain protector here where the chain rubs against. So if you have this one too high, it's going to rub out the bottom here when the rear swing arm is in its full compression. And if it's mounted too low, it's going to constantly rub against this, and then it's eventually going to get metal on metal. So it's important to dial in the height of this and where this sprocket is center line from the rear swing arm, because if it's not center line, then again you'll run into issues of it wearing down that really quickly, or going to metal on metal eventually. You also have to pay attention to the distance between here and here. The further out you go, the more pinch points it's going to, even if you're on center line, when that is fully compressed, it's going to hit one of these, because the flex point of the rear swing arm is here, as opposed to this, the sprocket being here. So at some point it's going to, touch the chain protector here. So you have to pay attention to that. This is what I have thus far. I'm mounting it on the inside. I just have some spacers here, some lug nuts that I just put it together. I'm just really just mounting it so I can get an idea of where it's going to be. I did screw in the bracket from the inside. So that screw right there, I don't know if you can see it right there. That screw, it's just, there's one in there and there's one in the back. And so if I was going with this bracket, I'd have to screw in the other side in order to make sure I'm level. So the tie points, it's a little difficult. Also, another thing to pay attention to, sorry, I'm gonna break my conversation here, is the distance between the motor and the rear swing arm. So right there, it's just literally a hair that's away from the swing arm. You don't want metal on metal ever, because vibration and all that can wear that thin. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do eyelet pillow block bearings in order to tie in the back, just based upon where the motor is sitting. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it, but I have some on order. We'll see how it goes. So really, I'm coming to a point where I'm going to have to weld some ears here in order to solidify the two front connecting points, and then two back, and then I'll probably do one up here to there. Notice this bracket is kind of recessed inward, so the battery actually has to fit in between there. So even if I bend it in a little bit, I have to make sure that the battery is going to clear that. So I'm measuring from here, the eyelets there, eyelets there, eyelets there, in order to come up with a bracket. And the same mounting point on the other side is actually different. So the brackets are, they don't exactly match. So from factory, so I'll have to make sure that it works with that side too, because really the frame points are different. So even if I mirror this bracket over to there, it's still not going to work. So I have to make sure that I'm paying attention to that. And then also the width, because the batteries are going to fit through here, either like that or straight up. I don't know yet. So once I get the motor mounted fixed on the bottom here, once it's set up, then I'll start working on that, fabricating the brackets there. I mean, there's quite a few tie points for the battery bracket. You have these here. You have the solenoid, starter solenoid, or the coil. I can't remember what it is. You have those tie points right there in order to make kind of like an L if you were sliding in the battery back in there. And then you can also go straight down and as much as you can. So the battery will probably fit like right there if it's going lengthwise. And then barely clear the top of the frame so you could put the original seat on. The gas tank, I'm going to cut the bottom of the gas tank. So I'm going to leave the top so I have the mounting points for the fairings here, the side fairings. And then I'm going to have to make some brackets in order to make sure that they don't, fly off. I'm going to put the standard radiator cooling fins in there. But again, just plastic. It's not going to last very long. So here's the bracket that I made. Just 2 mounting points. I do have a little bit of a adjuster area here, so I can move it back and forth. But yeah, it's just what it looks like, and it goes on the underside here like that. So it kind of clips in between the 2 fins on the motor, and then attaches to 2 different spots. Eventually I think I need to put an ear right there for this back end to tie into, like right there. So if I had an ear where that went all the way through, then I could probably just, secure it that way. I also have these 2 up here. So these are going to tie into the top of the motor and also provide me a tie point for the battery tray that goes all the way across. And I'll tie into that spot too. So just a quick update on the bracket that I made. All right. Got some mounting points here. I'm probably gonna shorten up these screws here so they don't poke out, but the battery is gonna fit right in between there. It's gonna go lengthwise this way and then kind of be flush up the top here. I'm gonna cut the gas tank, wherever that is. Oh, it's under here. I'm gonna cut the bottom of the gas tank like around here so that I could still have the mounting points up top and tie in the fenders. But the gas tank is going to be, the bottom half is just going to be cut because the battery fits right above here, or just right a little bit below this, almost flush with it, the top of the curvature of that battery. So the whole battery, that battery, lays in this way, and with the angle of that battery right there to be angled with the frame right here. So it fits just fine. 72 volt, 40 amp hour. And you actually have additional space in here, so you can go bigger if you wanted to, like 7250. I don't know, you just have to make sure that the dimensions are correct. So basically I'm just going to create a bottom plate that holds the bottom of that battery right there. Holds the bottom, so I might weld it into these side plates, and then it's going to go down like this, and then straight up, probably like fix a flat plate that goes all the way down here, kind of like an L bracket, in order to have the battery seat in the right place. I will probably have additional weld points on that sheet metal there to weld to the back, so I could have mounting plate attached to that mount right there. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to tie it in to the top here, but that round piece, how it's round like that, is pretty much just going to be flat, because the battery sits right up against this side right there and there, because it's about, I don't know, 5.5 inches thick. So battery will sit across here, it'll be flush right here, and then be at an angle in order to keep the mass to the center. It would be nice to get the mass as low as possible, but that would take re-engineering these brackets in order to slide the battery in from this way up against the shock here, close to the shock. But I want to stay away from the shock just in case any movement happens. I think that's the best spot to have the battery just seated right there. So another thing on the bracket that I did is so I cut some stainless steel spacers, and I have the battery spaced here, or the bracket spaced pretty well here. These are not tacked in. I just wanted them loose so I could adjust the motor. But it is really solid. So there's this tie point for the battery coming down, so it's not going to move downward, and it's not going to move this way. And then I've also went ahead and tied in the bottom here too, to that bottom bracket. So it is really solid. The only thing that I could have done is create some mount points on the frame, but just in case I want to revert this thing back to gas for any reason, I have an out. Anyways, but so here is, see how it's aligned. So you have hole. This is somewhat level, pretty darn near close. The bottom of this sprocket is in line with a little bit higher than the chain guide, which is what you want. You don't want the chain resting on the guide because it's going to wear that thing thin. And then if you look at the bottom here, the bottom of the down part of the sprocket, I'm not sure what you're going to call that, is way below the bottom of the chain guide. It's kind of hard to see with the phone, but so there it is. I mean, it's in perfect position. Since this thing has a gear reduction, I changed the rear sprocket to a 44. I just got a really good deal on it, and I said, why not? So I'm trying to 44 in the rear sprocket. I ride dirt, and I think the original one I had on here when I was riding was a 52. So it was a 13:52 ratio. I'm changing it from a 13:44 ratio. But because this thing is a gear reduction and has a max of around 6,500 RPM with 120 foot-pounds of torque, I think I might be able to get away with such a small rear sprocket. But we'll see. I'll change it up, and sprockets are not that expensive. I also have enough room here if I wanted to change that to a 14 tooth, and it would be just enough within the range. Although the bigger sprocket that you have, these were not really meant for 520 chains. As you can see, there's a little bit of rubbing here on the cover. So I might create a spacer just a little bit in order to kick this thing out so it doesn't wiggle as much and it doesn't wear thin where that point is. I don't know if it's going to wear it eventually, but so I'll have to keep my eye on that. Anyways, so yeah, this is the build so far. Thanks, guys. I used some 5/16 inch rod and spacers and also nuts in order to encompass the amount of spacing that I needed. I think it's about 5.5 inches to 5 3/4 inches wide in order to accept the battery mounting bracket. The spacers help the motor to stay in the proper place, though all my mounting brackets will help it to stay in one spot. This is just additional reinforcement. But the battery bracket is going to go in between here, and it's going to sandwich in between these two plates. So I'm using the existing mounting holes, and so thus far I have not been needing to weld any mounting points. I've just been able to work myself around it. So this is what it'll look like here for the moment. This is the mounting bracket that battery mounting bracket that I created. Basically, I just bent steel. I think this is about 1/8 inch steel at a 90-degree angle. It's about 6 inches wide, 6 1/4 inches wide, 8 1/4 inches long, and then it does the bend up about 2 inches. I did this and just by some simple, metal fabrication tools. I created these brackets. First, I used cardboard in order to kind of position where everything should be. My welds are crap because my welder was doing something weird, but it's solid. It'll be fine for what it is. So I welded these ears on, and basically this is going to go, you kind of have to sandwich it in there and then kind of rotate it in. And then once it gets in, it's going to sit like right there. So it's going to sit at an angle. So when you put the battery in, the battery is going to want to get to the closest center line as possible. The way the battery is set up is unique. So this plate has to move downward in order to accept the battery, and then everything kind of positions in place. But that's the way it sits. Here is the battery that I created, the battery casing that I created. This is actually from a $300 frame off my other e-bike that I created to accept a full motorcycle front end, just like that one in my other videos. Basically, the battery is too wide, so I just cut the whole thing down the middle, and you might recognize this as a standard battery for that frame. So basically, I just cut it in half, and then I use some Gorilla Tape just to protect some of the shavings here, and I used some Harbor Freight material just to prevent it from moving. But basically, I cut that whole frame in half, and there's about 5/8 of an inch in between, or half an inch. So really, I just made like an exoskeleton for the battery so that I can use it for mounting points as well, because I was going to bend this whole structure in order to fit that battery in there. But then I found these, and I'm like, well, I'm not using these for anything, so may as well put these to use. So I just used some Gorilla Tape in order to kind of put it together. I'm probably going to use some really thick zip ties in order to fully weld it, but not fully weld it, but fully encompass the whole casing. So what's going to keep this together? And I know you're like thinking they're going to use Gorilla Tape in order to hold my battery together. No. So really, I use these two mounting points, and they're very tiny. I forget what type of screw it is offhand. Let's see if I have it around here. It looks like I do not. But it's a very small, I want to say like M4 or something like that. Really tiny in order to get in there. So I'm using those as the mounting points of where my bracket is. There's two holes right here, 1 and 2. So basically those are going to go through and mount directly to that. So it's going to keep it together. There's no way it's going to separate. So I just really wanted to protect the battery from side hits. So I didn't want to go too much, like 1/8 inch thick, because then I'm getting into a weight concern. Although I like over engineering as opposed to under engineering. So the added protection would be good. But basically I just wrapped the whole thing in here, and I just built the exoskeleton around it, in order to prevent it from getting hit by rocks, and also to kind of keep it together and housed. So I'm going to use just a couple really big zip ties, maybe one right here and maybe one down here, just to kind of keep it together, just to make sure. But really, this is going to keep it intact. And also the top mounting point, which I have yet to create, in order to tie in the top two M4 screws here, to make sure that it doesn't move. When I put this whole entire thing in, it really doesn't move at all, especially when I create the mounting brackets. It ties into there, and then it ties into the mounting bracket of the battery right there. And then I screw this in order to make sure that this plate does not move. This plate has to move up and down in order for me to fit the battery in, because if I make it stationary, it's not going to fit in through there and I won't be able to take it out. So once I drop it in there, this plate kind of drops downward. I'll see if I can. So it drops downward in order to fit the battery in there. And then once it's in there and everything's stationed, then I move it upward and then put in that screw. So really that's kind of the process that I have here. I wanted it to be able to be removed, and just in case I need a new battery, or if I want to expand the battery, then I just create a new fabricated or create a new bracket in order to kind of get a little bit lower as well, so I could fit, you know, additional 10 amp hours or whatever you want to fit in there. Anyways, so this is kind of a long video, but this is where I'm at. All right, there we go. There we go. We have the washers in there. We have the bolt in there. I'm just going to tighten it tight so it comes over here. It's holding in this and also holding the battery into place. And so the only spot that I have to fabricate something is the top here. But really, it's very likely not going to go anywhere. I'm just worried about the vibration on the metal right here. So I'm going to construct something, because there is some eyelets in order to tie into up here. So I'll just kind of figure that one out. So since I got the battery bracket all hooked up, I'm just going to go ahead and tighten this, and this will cinch in the bottom plate together, and provide a little bit more pressure so it won't move. Yeah, I'll do the other side. There you go. All right, so that's it. I do have a little bit of work to do regarding the bracket that I'm gonna put up here. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. That's probably gonna be the best to tie in up there. But really, it's down. It's really not going anywhere. But yeah, so the battery is in the most center part. I'm going to be cutting the gas tank in order to fit over the battery here, and then so I could run the standard shrouds. But really, so this whole bike, basically we can put the 450 motor back in if we wanted to. But I don't know, this might be cool. I just don't know about the 44.2 sprocket that I put on here. So I might go back to the 52 if I don't find that torque is not there. Basically, I wanted to stretch out the power band, because it provides so much more torque than a 450, that if I went with a smaller rear tooth sprocket, that it'll stretch out the power band a little bit. But I think I might have a choice. I don't know. This front sprocket cost me $40 because these the qs138 motor typically comes with like a 428 or a 420 sprocket, and I needed 520 for a full-size dirt bike. So that cost me actually $40 just for that sprocket. So I'm not sure if they have a 12 tooth. That might be an option, but then again, you always run the risk of the tolerance between the the fluctuation of the rear swing arm. I mean, I have it in the right spot, but a 12 tooth might provide more torque if I feel like I don't want to go up in the rear tooth or rear sprocket to like a 50 tooth, which would be standard gearing. I think it's a 13 front and 50 in the rear, stock gearing. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I need to have a circuit breaker, and I'm going to put a circuit breaker here between the battery and the controller. So just to prevent, I think like 300 amps. Anyways, that's it. So I certainly have some work to do in order to cut it off the bottom of the gas tank to fit everything in the stock place. But as you can see, if I do follow the line of the gas tank, like right here, all the way around, then I should be able to provide enough space for the gas tank to go over the battery and provide additional waterproof protection. So I was thinking that maybe I can not necessarily go by the line all the way around, that I might be able to cut certain spots in order to fit the battery in better, but really to make it easy, I think I'm just going to cut the bottom half, because most of this is not going to fit. Possibly maybe some of this right here will stay and provide additional rigidity for the top plastics. I might just cut off some, but I know that I have to cut off as much as I can down below here in order to fit the gas tank over the battery. So I might do a line like this. So go over here and then like branch off, or just do it straight. Just follow this line all the way through in order to fit it over the battery. So that's the next step. Do make sure all of your fuel is out before you go cutting this with a cutoff tool. All right, we got top half, bottom half. I just followed that line, threw some blue tape on there, and just made a straight line. We'll see how it goes. All right, there you go. It fits pretty good. Probably could have got away with a lot more material underneath. But that would have taken quite a bit more planning. So I think it's okay for where it's at. All the plastics, the original plastics, I'm planning on having those put back on. So the seat's going to hold it down there. This is going to hold it. The screw's going to hold it down there. The 2 points of the front left-right fender is going to hold it right there, and then tie into the existing plates where the existing points where the radiator was plugged into. So might have to create some brackets there, but overall it's looking pretty good, pretty slick. Here it is with the gas tank and the fairing on. I am actually going to modify this basically in order to keep this fairing solid. I'm going to have to drill a hole through here and find a bolt that's long enough here, and then also a bolt that's long enough in order to go there. I think I'm going to weave it through the fin guard here, or the air induction fan shroud, I don't know what you want to call it. But if I drill through that, then I'll be able to make this more solid, as well as being able to screw in the fairing. So that'll be really strong. I just need to find bolts long enough. I think this is like maybe 6.5, 7 inches here, and then probably like another, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 inches down below. But yeah, I mean, things are looking actually pretty good. I love it. Battery pack actually came out really well, very solid. If you hit it, then there's steel in order to prevent the battery from hitting, the batteries inside getting hit. So I think it's really solid. These screws are too long right here, but whatever. I'm running out of bolts. Anyway, so that's where it is. So once I get the wiring done, I'm gonna find 2 bolts. All right, time to convert this gas cap to a charging port. I'll have that thing inside of the center there. So I just have to take apart the gas cap and then unscrew that and then drill a hole in order to fit this whole thing in there. And that way it has a quick accessible charging port right up on top. And then here's the XT60 connector, which will tap into my charge port on my battery. Almost there. Just gotta drill a pilot for that because it's off-centered. Then find out where the cap lies when you screw it on, so I have everything parallel and looking square. And there we go. So now I have the charge port, boom, right there, and on top of the gas cap.